committed crimes in the USA, mostly felonies. 75% of those taken into custody had convictions, including homicide and rape. One man arrested in Chicago and is an Iraqi citizen with a conviction of sexual abuse of a victim unable to consent. Many of the arrested non-felons were associating with the criminals. But those facts have largely gone unreported by the American press and by the radical left, which is actively misleading you.
What took place yesterday with raids in personal homes is part of the cog of the Trump deportation machine.
How inhumane this is to be breaking down people's doors and separating parents from their children.
This is Donald Trump really executing his campaign plan. He's trying to be a tough guy, so he's going to go after, the maids, the moms, the people that are working in the shops, instead of going after the hardcore criminals.
Maids, moms, and shopkeepers, according to that dishonest politician. Now, the false news reporting actually reached the level of hysteria. Newspaper headlines screaming things like, "The Trump deportation regime has begun." Immigrant community on high alert, fearing Trump's deportation force. On Devon Avenue in Chicago, news of immigration raids intensifies fears. We could find no headline in major newspapers, none, that bannered the fact the raids were targeted at illegal aliens who had committed serious crimes. Committed them. That's not press bias. That's blatant dishonesty. Here's another example. In the year 2013, the Obama administration removed from this country more than 434,000 illegal aliens, the highest number in history, which goes back to 1892. Did you see any anti-Obama demonstrations? Did you see any screaming headlines in the national media? No, you did not. Even after President Obama said this.
What we should be doing is setting up a smart, legal immigration system that doesn't separate families, but does focus on making sure that people who are dangerous, people who are, gangbangers or criminals, that we're deporting them as quickly as possible.
And that's exactly what President Trump is doing, exactly. But the illegal immigration issue has been set up by the media to demonize Mr. Trump as a racist and a brutalizer of the poor. That's what's really going on here, a setup. It's flat out disgraceful. If the federal government cannot remove aliens who commit serious crimes in this country, then we don't have an effective federal government. Yet the far left and the press, knowing full well that the ICE raids last week were directed at dangerous people, chose not to report that, instead smearing President Trump. We have now reached a low point in American journalism. As for the far left, they are people who do not want any immigration enforcement. They want open borders. They want alien criminals protected. They want anarchy. Why? Because they don't like America as it stands now. So it is very important for all honest citizens to know you are not getting accurate information and that there is a radical element in this country that wants to destroy it. If this continues, there will be a breaking point. And that's the memo. Now for the top story reaction, joining us from Wheaton, Illinois, nationally syndicated columnist Ruben Navarrete. So Ruben, I am very, very concerned about this blatant dishonesty, the reportage of the ICE raids last week. Are you as concerned as I am?
Bill, good to be with you again. I am concerned. My vantage point is of one who wrote about the 3 million deportations carried out by the Barack Obama administration. And I couldn't get a lot of these liberals in the media to join me on the front line. I couldn't get them worked up and excited about it. And now all of a sudden it's been surreal to watch in the last 30 days or so. They just woke up one morning and realized that people were being deported out of the United States. In fact, for the last 8 years, 1,000 people a day have been deported out of the United States. What's new is the liberal outrage.
But these are criminals in the Trump administration, and most of them were targeted criminals, to be fair, in the Obama administration as well. They sent back border trespassers, but the ICE raids were not directed at what that politician said, the chambermaids, and they weren't directed at tearing families apart. They were directed at convicted criminals in this country illegally.
No, I disagree with you, Bill. Don't be too generous to Barack Obama. He said as a talking point that, in fact, he was only getting rid of gangbangers. You heard it there. And criminals. But when they did audits of the people that he removed out of the country, they found that in many cases it was only about 10 to 17, 18% of those folks who had criminal records. What you do, the reason this gets confusing for a lot of folks, if you have a housekeeper who you trust in your home with your family, and they get deported and they come back, the minute they come back, they've committed a felony.
Okay, but
so
it
we
should
call
be
them
a felony.
criminal.
It should be a felony.
Well, we call him a criminal. And what Barack Obama did, and I don't want you or Donald Trump to fall into this trap, is for 8 years he played on the idea that when he said gangbanger or criminal,
all right,
an image would pop into our head.
Fine. Do you believe that the Trump administration last week was targeting violent felons? Do you believe that?
I don't believe that we know that the Trump administration pulled the trigger on these raids at all. I know we have the statement now from Secretary of Homeland Security,
yes.
John Kelly, who said that this was a targeted.
75%, Ruben. 75%.
He said it was a targeted. He said it was a targeted plan that was already in motion and planned before Trump took office.
Okay, but
so this idea,
if
the
Trump
liberals
didn't
are quick
want
to point
it,
the
Trump
finger.
could have stopped it, and he didn't, because he's targeting criminal aliens. Yet the liberal media won't tell you that, Ruben. They will,
Right,
they're not going to tell you that.
I agree with you. And they also didn't say that. They didn't tell us that when Barack Obama was doing it. I think conservatives have to be careful here not to play Obama's game, which is to deport, in fact, the maids and the housekeepers. Just say they're maids and housekeepers. Don't doctor them up with words like gangbanger.
Let that policy be written, but the dishonesty of the reportage on the ICE raids last week under the Trump administration was off the chart. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
I agree.
I don't see it.
No, it was surreal. It was surreal. These are the same people who at one point told me not to write about deporting people anymore, the fact that Barack Obama had deported people. I made liberal editors nervous.
In your view, they wanted to cover it up for the Obama administration, but they're using it as a club against Trump. Same people.
Yeah, they have discovered their humanity and outrage just in the last 30 days, because in the old days with Obama, this was somebody who they supported, voted for, and wanted to succeed, and they didn't want to make him out to be the bad guy.
All right, I do disagree with you a little bit. The Obama administration did target, though, the worst among them, and that people who are
That's
deported,
what he wants you to believe, Bill.
People who are deported and then come back again, I believe, deserve to be targeted. Ruben, always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you. Next on the Rundown, we'll talk with a former ICE agent about last week's raids and what we can expect in the future. Then the personal attacks on Donald Trump and his supporters ramp up. Charles Krauthammer has some thoughts on that moments away. With our lead story, ICE targeting criminal illegal aliens. Joining us now from Irvine, California, Claude Arnold, retired ICE special agent who was once in charge of investigations in Los Angeles. So when you saw the local news in the Southland, as they call where you live, reporting on the raids, what did you think?
My first reaction is it was mass hysteria, right? People being reported what actually wasn't happening. In fact, this operation was a fairly routine operation, the same type of operation they did conduct under President Obama throughout his administration. But it was being characterized as something that it wasn't. And what that did was it caused hysteria in those communities, people thinking that ICE is out.
All right, so they turned on the local news, Channel 7, Channel 2, Channel 4, the Indies out there in L.A., and all of a sudden they're hearing that poor innocent migrants are being dragged off by ICE agents, when the stat is, in Los Angeles, out of the 165 arrested, 151 had felony arrests. 151 out of 165. And the others that were taken into custody, I understand, had deportation warrants out on them. They were already ordered deported. Okay?
Yeah.
So did you hear any of that on any of the network news, local news in Southern California? Anything like that at all?
No. I've been doing some media today, so hopefully they'll be reporting what I told them.
But why didn't they report the truth?
You have to ask them why.
You don't have any idea living in that area as long as you have and dealing with illegal aliens? You know why they didn't.
Yeah, it's politically motivated. Okay. Yeah, of course it is. They're trying to characterize the Trump administration as being heavy-handed.
Okay, but it's more than that. They're trying to get migrant viewers to watch their channels. out there. And so they're not going to say, oh, these are the bad guys, these are the felons, the rapists, the gang members. They're going to say, oh, you know, they shouldn't be doing this to you. It's about money as well as politics, is it not?
It may very well be, yeah.
Ratings. All right. Now, in your experience, is the Trump administration doing anything differently than the Obama administration did?
I think there's one very small difference. The executive order that President Trump issued on immigration has returned to the line-level officers and agents the discretion to make arrests for people who are in the country in violation of immigration law, regardless of their criminal history. So in doing these targeted operations, which clearly were targeting felons, dangerous criminals, if they encounter someone who is in the country in violation of law, instead of looking like the other way, as they were required to under the policies of the Obama administration, they have the discretion to arrest someone and initiate removal
proceedings. But you use the word discretion.
So,
what the ICE people tell us is, if the illegal alien is not deemed to be a danger to the country, all right, they let them go.
They do. They're not detained. They may put them into the process, initiate removal proceedings that still have to go see an immigration judge, et cetera, but they're not going to detain them. You're absolutely right. They don't have the bed space to detain people like that. They've got to prioritize who they detain and who they don't detain.
All right, Mr. Arnold, we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Directly ahead, Charles Krauthammer on the personal attacks President Trump is being subjected to. Then later, Waters talking to the folks about climate change. Those reports after these messages. Personal story segment tonight. Seems hard to believe that President Trump has been in office for only 25 days, yet the country's in an uproar. Part of that includes personal attacks leveled at President Trump.
We have a president who is delusional in many respects, a pathological liar.
How did we get a pathological liar in the White House? Where are his lies coming from? Why do so many people believe him? And what can we possibly do about it?
I just want to thank President Agent Orange for perpetuating all of the evil that you've been perpetuating throughout the United States. I want to thank President Agent's successful attempt at the Muslim ban.
Joining us now from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. So Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, they got hammered by the personal stuff, but nothing like this. So what do you think the effect is, because it's not going to get any better, it's going to get worse, on the general population, younger people? I mean, is civil discourse gone forever in this country?
Look, it's clearly going to have a coarsening effect. The younger people are going to grow up in an atmosphere where this kind of invective is the norm. But I would disagree on one point about this being completely new. George W. Bush received as much abuse as any president I've ever seen. In fact, I'm the one who coined the phrase the Bush derangement syndrome because of the fact that so many people on the left were attacking him in ways that were deranged. I mean, they were over the top, and there was a personal animus. He was called a Nazi and all that. So we forget. But the difference is this. That tended to set in after the Iraq War. So it was a reaction to something that Bush had done. Today, it's Trump, who's only been in office for 30 days, I mean, for 3 weeks, and he's got this reaction. It's kind of a visceral, personal reaction to him, and I do think it can only have a negative effect. The problem is he feeds back into it with his own invective, and then you get a new generation raised in an atmosphere where there are no adults in the room.
All right, now, throughout our history, we've had presidents that did fight back, like Mr. Trump, Andrew Jackson being the most notable. But there were, you know, presidents like Grover Cleveland and people like that who did that kind of thing. But now the mass media and social media, all right, transports every tweet, every insult by not only the president, but those attacking president right into everybody's computer and machine. And so that I think this is going to poison reasonable discourse going forward. And there's no coming back from it. Pretty black view, but I think that's what's in play.
I'm not so sure. I think people do come back. The Reagan years were pretty bad. The problem is that he was so amiable. It was Clark Clifford. Clifford was the Democratic wise man who coined the inimitable phrase that Reagan was an amiable dunce. You couldn't hate Reagan. You could think he was wild, he was a fascist or whatever, he's going to get us into World War, but it was hard to hate him. But after a lot of invective against him, you had the Bush senior years. They were fairly quiet. The Clinton years were pretty rough. I mean, the guy was impeached after all, and, it went a long way. So I think we've had some pretty rough politics.
But the media didn't serve up the attacks on Clinton. They came from primarily political sources.
The media were as hard on them as any Democrat. The media,
but it wasn't a personal thing. I mean, you remember the mantra, and that was promoted by the media as well, the big city media anyway, that it's only about sex. All right, that's all. You guys are making a big deal out of it. You got to ignore it. This came from the liberal media. They pushed it, and now what you have is every single day, Trump is this, Trump is that. And high school kids in particular, I think college kids, they don't pay attention, but high school kids, they hear this stuff. And you saw it last week here in New York City. I don't know whether you saw Waters' report when these kids went out of class to protest. And then we caught up with them and they didn't know what they were protesting against. They were just yelling ridiculous slogans. They had no idea what they were saying.
But that worries me less than anything else. I mean, high school students who have no idea what's going on. It's like the Occupy Wall Street people. You'd interview them. They had no idea why they were there. It was fashionable. The first blast of a cold winter wind, and they were gone and scattered. I'm not sure that matters. Also, young people, they do grow up. It takes a little bit of time.
Some of them.
But, well, the 18-year-olds become 35-year-olds with 2 kids and a mortgage, and they stop acting like snowflake idiots. So I'm not so sure that's a permanent phenomenon. And I do think, I'm not going to let you off the hook here, Trump contributes to this by giving back in his own way. Lying, Ted,
well, that's
crooked,
what got him there, though,
crooked.
Charles.
It might have gotten him there, but that makes it worse.
Into the White House.
But that makes it worse. Then he got a positive incentive to go ahead and do this. He will be imitated by others after he comes and goes. That's what I think is going to hurt.
But it's hard. All right, look, I'm not justifying any ad hominem, that's to the man, attacks on anybody. All right, we don't do that here. It's all fact-based here. But I don't know, in this vicious climate, all right, I think Trump's got to fight back. Now, whether he does it in another way, maybe they should have a big meeting there and say, look, we might be able to do this more effectively. Last word.
Yeah, you got to play the Twitter machine.
No.
That's the Trump id speaking, and he's strong enough. He's got enough subordinates who can carry the fight. He needs to be above the fray.
A little bit more. I agree with that.
I don't think he'll ever do it. That's not his nature, but that's his problem.
If success starts to roll in, he might. If failure rolls in, he won't. Charles Crowder, everybody, playing more heads. The Factor moves along this evening. The radical left continuing to bring up the Nazi Party as mentioned in relation to the Trump administration. Britt Hume has some thoughts on that. And Waters talking global warming with the folks. Back and follow-up segment tonight. As you may know, Nordstrom's and a few other retailers have downgraded products from Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter. Now, Sears and Kmart have stopped selling some Trump home furnishing products online. So what's behind all this? Joining us from Los Angeles, Leslie Marshall. From Washington, Katie Pavlich. I didn't even know there were Trump home products.
Well, now you know.
So, I mean, I'm a